What's up, HyperFast Nation? On this episode of the show, we have an amazing real estate team leader, sold 250 million last year with 40 agents in a very challenging market. So we talk a little bit about that. And more importantly, he just came out with a book called The Good Mood Revolution, which can help anyone and everyone out there. But I think real estate agents, especially right now, need to learn the lessons from that book that we talk about on this podcast. Stand by for the next episode of the HyperFast Show. All right, welcome to the show today, Matt. How are you doing?
My buddy Dan, dude, so good to hang out with you again, friend.
Yeah, it's been too long for sure. Couple years now. I actually think you were mentioning before the show your ski trip in Aspen, which that might have been the last time that we were together, which was almost in January. That'll be 5 years ago, just
Crazy,
before COVID took off. Yeah.
crazy. Well, man, it's a lot's happened in 5 years.
Yeah, a lot has, we saw the craze of 20 and 21 and the pullback, and you've got a new book out, which we'll talk about later. I think what I'm most impressed about, like I told you up front, was in this market last year with 40 agents, down in Charleston area, you sold 250 million. So we definitely need to like talk about that, but maybe give the listeners and viewers a quick background on how you got into real estate and built such an amazing team.
Yeah, man. So I was selling toner out of college. I got out of college with a sales degree from Western Michigan. The only job I could get, I was a 21-year-old kid, and I thought I was hot stuff. I wasn't hot stuff, but I thought I was. And I like couldn't get a job. And I actually went to go get a job selling copy machines, and I got it. After months of trying to get a job, I get this job, and then I failed a drug test. And I was like, oh, that's a bummer. So I ended up getting a job selling recycled toner cartridges that go inside copy machines. And dude, I was good at it. I was making like 100 grand a year. And this was 25 years ago when I graduated college. So that was a lot, like I was rolling. At least I thought I was. But then I thought, man, I'm selling these toner cartridges for 60 bucks. What if I sold a house for 600,000? Like that would be better. And people would care about it. Nobody cared about their toner cartridge. Like, you don't care what toner cartridge is in your copier right now, do you, Dan?
No, I look up the model number and go to Amazon and get whatever pops up first.
Yeah, but I was selling this commodity, and I was in Colorado, and I went up in the mountains just on a hike by myself, and I sat down on the edge of this cliff, and I was basically just trying to find what should I do. And it's interesting that I did that at that time of my life. I was not religious, I was not spiritual, but for some reason I knew to go into nature. I don't
Mm.
even know. I don't even know why, but I went into nature and I asked nature, what should I do? And I got a message back, and it was get into real estate. And so I have had a buddy, or my cousin was in real estate in Charleston. So I called her up and I said, hey, I'm thinking of getting into real estate. And she said, you should come to Charleston. So I flew to Charleston. This was 2005 so I sold copy machine toner cartridges for like 3 years. And then got to Charleston 2005 and joined a team and worked in that team for 3 years, and then started out on my own as an independent agent in 2009. And that's when I started my own team. It was just me and one other guy and one assistant. I hired one assistant. Uh, Me and this guy were getting drunk at the bar. This girl was hanging out with us, and we said, hey, you want a job? And she had a job. And that's how we started Matt O'Neill Real Estate in 2009.
So you
Uh,
you started in the last kind of bad cycle then, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I started in a terrible cycle. So, and I was sitting down with people, and they were going through divorce. They were like losing everything. Everything was falling
Mm.
apart because of the financial crash. And so all of my sales were these short sales. But that was the only business that was there. And the agents that have been in the business a long time resented it. They resented the change. for me, I didn't know any different and I embraced it. So there's a lesson there.
Mm.
The lesson, because I was resenting this most recent change with the change in NAR, because I had been doing this now at this point for almost 20 years. And then NAR change is coming along and I was resisting it like those old stodgy agents were about short sales. Um, and as soon as I embraced it, things turned around. So yeah, so that was 2009. And then that I was still at Remax, having a team at Remax. And I ended up making like half of the company's sales. Just my little team. I had 3 or 4 agents and 2 assistants, and we were half of the volume. So the volume of the company was 50 million. We were 25 million within 3 years. And I was doing it just with hustle, expireds, FISBOs, everyone, all my assistants were calling. They were sending me out to the boondocks with like chickens and goats and things like that. And I remember like showing up at a trailer and this guy invited me in and I see 3 shotguns sitting on the couch. And I was like, I left something in my car. And just went to the car and drove away because I was just like, I don't want to be here. And that house, man, it had a Rottweiler on a thick chain in the front yard that was like barking at me. It was just an ominous thing. So I always tell agents, if the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, you don't have to be there. So that's a good
Mm.
story. That's a good story that I tell them, that I took off. And because I don't want to have a bad reputation, I called him and I just said, hey, I made up something. My wife needed me. There was some kind of emergency. I'm so sorry. I'll have to reschedule. And then just didn't reschedule. Um, so that, yeah. And then in 2012, I said, I feel like every single house that we put up with the balloon on our sign is helping the other 20 agents in our office.
Mm.
Why don't we create a brand that stands for luxury? That's what I wanted to sell, was luxury homes. We were not selling luxury homes. And every time we put up a sign, it will stand for us. And so all the calls will come back to us and it won't go to these other agents who basically were benefiting from our hard work. And I started Matt O'Neill Real Estate in 2012. And that was really cool because when I opened up the office, those 4 agents that I was like, hey, we're going to have our own brand. This is going to be amazing. I was really naive. I didn't know that when you change things that people don't like it. They all quit. And I had this brand new office, new copy machine, bought all this furniture, two people on payroll, more expensive. It was more expensive for me than it was to stay at Remax, and I had no agents. What's
Mm.
crazy, dude, is I then end up getting notified by the IRS at the same time. So all my agents quit and I got all these expenses. And then the IRS says, oh, we've been trying to get a hold of you for 3 years. You've underpaid payroll taxes since you've opened. And with penalties, you now owe us 180,000. And I
Fun.
had I had no way of getting a hold of $180,000, and we were losing money every month because of the gamble that I'd made. I didn't know the agents weren't going to come, so we were in trouble as soon as we went out on our own.
Mm. So how did you get back on your feet?
I pulled my 2 staff members together and the one agent that we had, and I said, I just told him the truth. I'm transparent. I said, hey, we'll go out of business if we don't change a ton of things and sell a bunch of houses and operate at a level that we haven't seen before. And I said, I've got to be on appointments every single day, and I've got to be recruiting agents. And I'm just like this is a situation. We owe money we don't have. The IRS have been trying to get in touch with our accountant for 3 years. For some reason, my accountant didn't want to tell me. I don't know why.
Mm.
I mean, it would have been nice to have known 3 years ago when he was getting these notices that we were behind, so I could have paid it and not ended up in the mess I was in. But this is one of those interesting things, man, is that all these adversities that we face in the moment, they seem crazy. At the same time, we had our first baby on the way, and we were building our first house. And so I went to the I went to the builder and I changed all the materials. I was like, take the granite countertops out, put in Formica, put in, and the banker called me to his office and sat me down and made sure he looked me in the eye and he said, you cannot change this house. we're loaning on a house that you had spec'd out as having these things, and you cannot change it. And he wagged his finger at me. I was like, oh, that was nice. You could have told me that in an email, but appreciate you having me. Well, I'm trying to save my company, take a day out to come look you in the eye so you could wag your finger at me. That was fun. Um, so yeah, we worked like crazy. I hustled. I recruited a bunch of people as quick as I could, was training them at the same time, going on all these appointments, didn't see my wife or my new baby for like a year. And that year we ended up getting back on our feet. So we had sold 23 million at Remax the year before. We sold 22 million in the first year on our own with a brand new team that I had recruited. And so that was a huge win, even though that's the only year until after COVID that we ever went backwards in sales. It was
Mm.
a big success. But what happened is because by the end of the year, we were operating at such a high level, I paid the whole IRS back by August. The following year, we doubled. So the following year, we
Wow.
sold 56 million because we were clicking on like all cylinders out of necessity. We had to survive. And then that new level of effort, we were cruising. And then we ended up winning the sixth fastest growing company in the state. We went from 50 million to 80 million to 120 million to 180 million to 225 and then to 300 and then to 380. And that was COVID. Was our peak was at 383 at the height of COVID. And then COVID happened, and we had to readjust again. And so now we're pacing for about 265 million this year.
Wow. What was it like for you? I know 2022 is when like sales velocity went down, and you're the challenge with teams is you've got all these people, you've got a certain overhead you got to cover, right? So if I'm just throwing numbers out, but like if you sell 20 homes, you make nothing. If you sell 30 homes, you make 100 grand that month, right? So there's
Right.
just a slight pullback can be really risky with and you can't really change the overhead quickly many times. Like what was that period like where you realized like crap?
It was awful. It was terrible. Yeah, man. And I thought I had such good vision.
Mm,
We started slashing costs in 2022, and I thought, and every single time I'd be like, all right, what we want to do is we want to trim the branches, but we don't want to cut the trunk. And the billboards came down, and I cut all of Zillow, and I cut all of realtor.com. We were spending like over $1 million on Zillow and realtor.com leads. And I thought, man, if I save over $1 million a year, that would be good. It wasn't enough. So eventually it ended up being I had to cut staff, which was the last thing I wanted to do.
mm,
And because those are terrible decisions, letting people go that are relying on you to pay their bills and that have been there for you. But that we finally ended up making that call in 2024. And it was, I went through, we were losing 100 grand a month for like 4 months straight before I finally said, all right, we got to let people go. And, you know, thankfully, we had great retention of our agents, even through the changes that we were making. But, this book that I wrote is called The Good Mood Revolution, and it's about how to be in a good mood, even going through tough times. Couldn't have been a better time to be writing a book about how to
mm.
be in a good mood during tough times when you're losing 100 grand a month. And my stepdad, who's grandpa to my kids, was going through lung cancer, and I was taking him to every single appointment. He ended up losing his battle at the same time as we're losing all this money. And then at that exact moment, this was April, we get the notification that NAR has changed all commissions. And it's like, I'm like, dude, I'm not winning anything. I'm losing,
Yeah.
I'm losing on all fronts. And now NAR wants to change this thing. And I just spiraled. I was like, this is too much. Like, maybe I don't want to do this business. But it was because I had a lot of other stuff going on too. And it was a very cool situation for my broker to stand up. And she came to me and she said, Matt, I think we need to embrace this as an opportunity. I'm like, that's a beautiful thing to say. And that phone call, I decided to embrace it as an opportunity. And
Mm,
as soon as I made a decision like that, things turned around. And that's kind of that's interesting. It's another like success leaves clues. When we're resisting things, we're suffering. When we accept things, we get out of
mm.
suffering.
I love that. What well yeah, what was let's go more into the book. What was it like writing this book as you're going through all of these challenges and how did that process I'm sure it helped you a ton. How did it help you?
Yeah, so the first half of the book is about how to get out of the 8 bad moods that we all
Mm,
experience. And the chapter on conquering hopelessness, I didn't have a personal experience with hopelessness, which is it's the third most destructive emotion that we can experience. And I was writing about Robin Williams, and my chapter was about
mm,
Robin Williams, right? And I don't know Robin personally. I adore him. I adore his work, and I was studying about him and reading articles about him and doing my research to write a good piece on him. But I didn't like it because all of the other 8 negative emotions I had experience with and I had stories about that were personal, and I didn't really want to write someone else's negative story. And so going through that, I experienced the emotion of hopelessness. And I was able to then
mm,
write my own story and write Robin out of the book, which was nice because I didn't want to tell someone else's negative story. But then I had, so the book is about how to get, the first half is how to get out of the 8 negative moods, and getting myself out of hopelessness was great because then I could teach other people how to get out of hopelessness. It's just a normal emotion, but when we get into it, man, it's a dark place.
mm. How did you go about figuring out like which of the moods were bad and like that there's 8 of them? What was that process like?
Yeah, so there's a guy, I was reading a book called Power versus Force and
Mm,
Transcending the Levels of Consciousness. These were written in the 90s by a guy named Dr. David Hawkins. And he used muscle testing. Like, I don't, are you familiar with muscle testing?
no. It's share, please.
So a lot of like if you research it, muscle testing is a very common practice. I do it right. I do it myself. Um, but you can lay on a table and someone can put a certain type of medication on your chest, and your subconscious knows if this medication is good for you or not good for you. And someone can ask you, "Is this good for you?" And if your arm is strong, that means your subconscious believes that this medication is good for you. And if your arm is weak, it means that it's not. So a weak arm is a no answer and a strong arm is a yes answer. And you know, you can think about that book, the Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow, or the subconscious. I just watched David Osborne do his goal setting thing, and he was talking about the subconscious mind. He said if the conscious mind moves at the pace of a snail, the subconscious mind moves at an F4 fighter pilot.
Mm,
That's the difference in speed and power between the subconscious and the conscious. So all of your like true intelligence would come from the subconscious. Now, Hawkins believes a little bit different in that we're all connected to God, that all of us are connected to everything else, and everything is connected to our source and our creator. In science, that would be that we all started from nothing, and then out of nothing, everything exploded in a big bang. And if it all exploded all at once out of nothing, we're all made of the same stuff, and we all came from the same source, right? This makes a lot of sense. And there's a ton of science that will back up that every single thing is connected, but we kind of know that intuitively anyway. Well, he was doing muscle testing on large groups of people, thousands of people, and would get the exact same answers. And he wrote a book called Truth versus Falsehood, and basically said with muscle testing we can know the answer to any question. And it was awesome. So he cataloged the levels of human consciousness with this scientific method. And these are the 8 levels of negative human consciousness. They are shame being the lowest one,
mm,
then guilt, then hopelessness, then sadness, and then fear. Now, in an interesting one, the next, it seems positive, but it's not. Desire. So
mm.
you and I, we set big goals. The person
Yeah.
listening here like has desire. I want to have that nice house. I want to have the nice car. I want to have this many sales. it doesn't mean don't set goals. I spent a weekend with Eckhart Tolle this summer, and I took the class I took with him was conscious manifesting. So Eckhart Tolle, one of the most spiritual people on the planet, he sets goals. That doesn't mean that we don't use desire, but it does mean when we stay in the consciousness of desire, it's not a positive thing because we're always
Mm.
wanting more and our happiness is delayed until we get this thing. We can move into desire, set the goal, but then we have to move back present so we can be happy. If we always are saying, I want something, to actually inspire more action and conquer more. And then eventually we feel pretty freaking proud of ourselves. And we're like, I did all that. And then we get stuck in the last of the bad moods, which is pride. And this desire to anger to pride loop is something a lot of high charging entrepreneurs go through. I certainly lived in it. And
I have too.
yeah, man, like this, but this is what like you achieve a lot like this. You can achieve a lot, and at the same time, you can destroy a lot. So all of these agents I had, then my turnover was super high. The culture wasn't fantastic. Yeah, we're winning fastest growing company awards and things like that. But I hired this coach, and he calls me into his office, and he asked my wife to come. And Katie's sitting on a couch next to me, and he says, Katie, what's it like to be with Matt? And she said, honestly, it's really hard sometimes. I feel like I have to walk around on eggshells, that if I say the wrong thing, he could snap because he's so stressed out and he's pushing things so hard. And that I can't be myself all the time. Man, that was hard to hear.
Mm.
And it was exactly what I needed to hear. So that was in my desire and anger and pride. And my pride, I couldn't see. Pride can't see its own downsides. It can't see its blind spots. At least I had enough awareness to have a coach that would show me my blind spots. And he had enough awareness to bring my wife in so that I could hear the blind spot. Of course, she had said these things to me, but it being in that room, in that moment, I finally heard it. So we
Mm.
move into the second half of the book is about the 8 positive emotions. And as I'm moving into the positive emotions, the first of those positive emotions is humility. And humility is the opposite of pride. When we're humble and we have humility, we no longer think we're the shit. We no
Mm.
longer are like, oh, I've accomplished all of this and everyone, I'm like better than everyone. It's actually, I'm like, I'm no better than anyone. And that humble, I'm no better than anyone mindset is a beautiful place to be. It's the foundation of all positive emotions. And so from humility, I was able to go back and say, I want to be a better husband. I want to be a
Mm.
better dad. I want to be a better business owner. I want to love the people that work with me and not just see them as a means to accomplishing more. Could I actually go in and have relationships again? And that was really nice. So the first of the positive moods is humility, and it ends all ego. The pinnacle of the ego is pride. And so, according to Hawkins' research, 78% of the world is living below pride and below. So 78% of the world is
Mm.
skewed to the negative, which is why we look at people who are super prideful with all of this, like look at the president that we've elected twice, probably the most prideful guy I've ever seen. And yet we want to bring him in because the ego looks up to pride and says, if you've got that much pride, you're the superpower. The ego thinks pride is the end all be all. Michael Jordan, right? All of our heroes are the most prideful people. And yet it's so negative. And there's all this destruction. I mean, you can look at the personal lives of all the people that live in pride, and they're not pretty. It's not lovely. There's a beauty that comes when we move into the positive emotions. And so I veer from Hawkins on the positive emotions. His first positive emotion is integrity, and humility is a little bit of a piece of it. For me, humility is everything. So the second half of my book is the 8 positive emotions that I think are going to give us the most beautiful life. And so after humility, we move into just taking full responsibility. And responsibility. So now I'm humble and I'm taking responsibility. So as taking full responsibility would say, hey, everything's my responsibility, and not in a prideful way, but me working on my family life, me having relationships in my office, the agents liking where they work, everything is up to me. So how do I make that happen? And we made a ton of changes. Now, this is what's cool, dude. We went from winning fastest growing companies to we became the #1 company to work for in the state of South Carolina. So out of
Wow.
470,000 businesses across all industries, we were named the #1 place to work. And over the last 4 years, we've been top 10 every single year since I made these shifts from like who I was being to who I wanted to be. Our turnover is basically non-existent, which is crazy for big teams. Like turnover is like the biggest issue for teams. We still lose an agent here or there. Knock on wood, it's the best it's ever been. Uh, you know, I, I just started to like actually, there's only 40 agents instead of 85. Great. I can connect with 40. When it was 85, I had layers of leadership and management, and I was disconnected. And it was like, I was like the Wizard of Oz pulling, levers, and you're like, this person, you go ahead and train this, and you go ahead and train that. And now in a humble way, every single Monday, I'm sitting down with all the agents and doing training class. Every Wednesday, I'm sitting down with the new agents and I'm teaching them how to do real estate again. It takes some humility to go backwards and to do that. But my happiness is so high. We're a profitable company, and everyone likes where they work. And it's pretty cool. That's kind of our journey.
Wow. Well, that is amazing. I love the framework. It's very timely for myself as well. What would your recommendation be to real estate agents that might find themselves in those later stages in the bad mood? Like, because it's hard. I know from personal experience when you're in there to see it. All right. So
Yeah,
how would
yeah,
someone who's out there hard charging, growing, desiring, they're proud of what they're doing, like
yeah.
how do they get out of it? How do they even know they're in it?
Yeah, you can't know. You can't know unless someone calls you on it, because the hallmark of pride is that it thinks it has no flaws. So when I was prideful, I thought I was infallible. Like I thought I was doing everything right, that I was the best husband, provide, you got all the excuses. You just don't look at your own stuff. It will come, like pride comes before the fall. So there's always a fall. And then the fall, hopefully, is the moment, like they say, when the heart breaks open. And hopefully we can look in when we fall and we can say, do I want to continue to suffer? Or do I want to grow? And growth looks really nice, like really nice. We get back to being humble and kind, and eventually we get to the highest emotions. The highest emotions are gratitude. We just live saying thank you to everybody. Like, man, you wouldn't believe, I now, how James Clear tracks things.
Yeah.
One of the things I track now is, did I thank someone in my company today? because I want to live in this state of gratitude where before I used to say they're lucky to work for me. Like I'm providing all of this stuff for them. They're lucky that they get to be here. Now it's the total opposite. I'm lucky that I get to work with them. So gratitude's one of the four highest of the moods, and then it moves into love. And I changed one of our core values from I can't remember what it was, but we changed it to kindness. And so now what we stand for is kindness. Some of the sharks, some of the biggest agents I had hated all of these changes. And they went off and they did their own thing. But the people who stayed were the kind ones. And that's why we're winning all these awards about why it's so cool to work with us, because everybody likes each other. You know, it's not that dog eat dog, go grow, 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 sell as much as you can. It's more like, hey, I want you to have an awesome life with your family. I want an awesome life with my family. We should know each other's families. And when what you find is that we go from gratitude and then to loving everyone, even the people that seem like they're annoying, we love them all. Then we find an immense joy. Joy comes from loving everything. When we love everything, things are so joyful. And the final of the good moods we want to live in is a really peaceful life. So that's, yeah, it's a good mood progression. What do we do when we find ourselves in bad moods? Like grab the book. It's called Good Mood Revolution. Figure out whatever the 8 moods you're in, read that chapter, and then I'd say just read the whole book so you can know where you can go. But it feels a lot better to be in the higher moods.
For sure. Well, when does the book come out and how do people get it?
Yeah, it's on barnesandnoble.com. It's on amazon.com. It's release date is December 17th. And yeah, and then if you know if somebody if there's an agent listening to this that just really resonates with this message, I have a podcast every week called Good Mood Revolution as well, and I just talk about how to be happy.
Mm. Well, we could all use it. You're doing amazing work, on the real estate side, of course, but then now something that can affect so many more people. So thank you for that. If people are listening and have referrals or buyers and sellers that want, need
Dude,
help
we
in your
freaking
area in Charleston. Yeah.
love referrals. Absolutely. If anybody's got somebody for Charleston, man, and we're really good too. So you send us a referral, we're gonna close it.
How do they find you, or where do they send it to?
Yeah, mattoneilrealestate.com. And we're all over it,
Okay.
man. You reach out to us in any way, call us, email us, go to the website, fill out a contact form. Like we'll be all over it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the HyperFast Agent Show today. This was amazing. Guys, if you're listening out there, check out the Good Mood Revolution, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles. And thank you again, Matt, for being on the show today.
See you, bro.
All right. We'll see you next time.